I made a point of being late. It was a deliberate choice to put off getting the marriage certificate with Clara. In the life I'd lived before, she had disappeared with Daniel for 20 years, right after she found out I was sick. She only came back when I was on my deathbed, holding a photograph of Daniel and asking me with a strange look in her eyes, if we had just waited a little longer before getting married, would things have turned out differently? When I opened my eyes and realized I had been reborn, the first thing I saw was Clara standing at my dorm room door. She was waiting for me, ready to go to the marriage registration office. I told her a lie, something about needing to deliver an important document to a colleague, and sent her on ahead of me. After she left, instead of following, I walked up the mountain path to Mr. Chen's house. I settled into his old rocking chair on the porch, watching the sea of clouds drift in the valley below and soaking in the warm sun. Mr. Chen came out and handed me a freshly roasted sweet potato, his brow furrowed with curiosity. "Aren't you supposed to be getting your license with Clara today?" he asked. "What are you doing up here?" I took a bite of the steaming sweet potato and managed a small laugh. "I had a terrible nightmare," I told him. "I just can't seem to shake the feeling." Mr. Chen patted my shoulder comfortingly. "It was only a dream, son. What matters is the life you're living now. Once you and Clara are married, life will be good. You won't have to worry about bad dreams anymore." I paused for a moment, then nodded with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "You're right, Mr. Chen. I'll just stay for a little while longer, and then I'll head down." But marrying Clara? That wasn't going to happen this time around. In my previous life, just after Clara and I had walked out of the registration office with our new marriage certificate, she had literally bumped into a young man named Daniel. He lived in the same village where we were assigned to work. On our way back to the dorm, Clara was unusually quiet. I assumed she was just being thoughtful, trying to be a proper married woman and avoid any hint of impropriety with male colleagues. It wasn't until I was dying that I understood the truth. From that single, accidental bump, Clara had fallen for Daniel instantly. She wasn't avoiding suspicion. She was drowning in regret. She regretted not waiting just one more day to marry me. After that, a chill settled between us. She would often stare off in the direction of the village, lost in thought. When I asked her what was wrong, she would dodge the question. As my work got busier and her answers remained evasive, I eventually stopped asking. I thought that when she was ready, she would talk to me. But after our initial project ended, we were assigned to different locations and began living apart. I believed it was temporary, but with every subsequent reassignment, we ended up even farther from each other. When I finally brought it up, she would just say she was following the company's orders. It wasn't until I returned to Sea City for a meeting that I overheard my colleagues talking. I realized then that apart from our very first assignment, all the others had been the result of specific requests Clara had made to our superiors. We had a massive argument about it. She apologized but never gave me a reason. The next morning she was gone. I thought our marriage was over then, but life always has a way of surprising you. Not long after, I fell seriously ill. Suddenly, Clara reappeared, and, unlike before, began to care for me with an intense attentiveness. She awkwardly learned how to cook for me, and insisted we take walks together every evening. Then, just as I was starting to believe things could be fixed, she vanished again. I asked everyone, searched for what felt like an eternity, but no one knew where she was or if she was even alive. I learned to do everything on my own. I thought she must have died. But then, on my deathbed, she reappeared. That was when I learned the truth. For the past 20 years, she had been living with Daniel. They had even adopted a daughter, showering her with love. Daniel had passed away just before she returned to me, weighed down by his own regret, the regret of not being her husband in this life. Clara told me she was sorry. but I could also sense a deep resentment in her, which confused me. If she didn't love me, why not just tell me? She could have divorced me and built a life with Daniel instead of abandoning her husband and ignoring her own parents. What right did she have to resent me? It was my own daughter, the one I had raised by myself, who provided the final, crushing piece of the puzzle. She told me she envied the adopted girl for the love she had received. She blamed us for bringing her into a world she never asked to be a part of. Only then did I find out that she had been in contact with her mother for years, hiding it from me the entire time. I stayed at Mr. Chen's for about an hour before saying my goodbyes and heading down the mountain to the marriage office. Just as I got there, I saw Clara helping Daniel up from the ground. I watched as she gazed at him, her expression completely mesmerized. In my previous life, I had been so caught up in the moment and helping Daniel and chatting with him that I had completely missed the look on Clara's face. Now, watching from the outside, it was painfully obvious. "Clara, I'm here," I called out. "Have you been waiting long?" Seeing me, Clara froze, her face flushing with panic. "Oh, Leo, you're here. I also noticed the way Daniel looked at me. It was different from last time, filled with a complex mix of emotions, maybe even envy. But when I glanced back at him, his expression was normal again, as if I had imagined it all. It made me curious. This time, the marriage certificate hadn't been signed yet, and she had met Daniel earlier. What would she do? Would she break up with me for him? Or would she marry me and then run off with him just like before? "It's getting late," I said, pretending to be in a hurry. "Should we go in and register?" Clara's face went pale. "Ouch! My foot hurts," Daniel exclaimed right on cue, breaking the tense silence. In our past life, Daniel hadn't been hurt at all. The timing was just too perfect. Could he have been reborn too? I studied him closely, but couldn't find any sign. Clara immediately took Daniel to the clinic. The doctor said that aside from a small scrape that would heal quickly, there was nothing wrong with him. Daniel's face flushed with embarrassment, but Clara looked relieved. On our way back, as we passed the marriage registration office, Clara hesitated. "Leo, they're closed for the day. How about we come back tomorrow?" "We'll see," I replied casually. "You have to pick a good day for something as important as getting married." I smiled to myself. In this life, there would never be a good day for that. Clara sighed. "All right, I'll let Mr. Chen know." Clara and I had come on our own bicycles. For the ride back, Daniel didn't hesitate to hop onto the back of Clara's bike. She glanced at me, a little embarrassed, but didn't tell him to get off. I pretended not to notice and rode my bike ahead of them. The cool evening breeze carried the sound of their voices back to me. I couldn't make out the words, but I could tell from their tone that they were happy, and I could hear Clara's laughter, deliberately restrained. How long had it been since I'd heard her laugh like that? In my memory, it seemed that after meeting Daniel, she had never truly smiled at me again. But none of that mattered to me anymore. As we rode into the village, some of the villagers saw Daniel on Clara's bike. They looked from them to me, some winking, others shaking their heads with disapproval. I knew what they were thinking, but I just smiled faintly and continued toward my dorm. Clara had already rented a small house for our future married life and had moved most of her belongings there. I stopped as I passed it. It was a simple place with 2 bedrooms, a central living area, and a small courtyard. In my past life, when I came back from the registration office, I saw the bright red wedding decorations she had put up and felt a surge of happiness. No one knew that while the bride had cheerfully decorated her wedding house the day before, on the actual wedding night, all that warmth had vanished. That night was just the first of countless lonely nights to come, where we would lie silently in our separate beds, wide awake. Clara didn't come to find me for dinner that evening, as she usually did. I went to the cafeteria alone with my meal container. Inside, I saw her sitting across from Daniel, the two of them serving each other food from their plates. I don't know what she said, but I saw Daniel cover his mouth as he laughed. When Clara finally noticed me, she paused and quickly stood up. "Leo, you're here," she said, flustered. Daniel just got back, and there's nothing to eat at his place, so I brought him here. We were just about to bring some food back for you. I didn't expect you to be here so early." Early? There were hardly any people left in the cafeteria, and the food was almost gone. It reminded me of a night in our past life, right after we got our license. Clara had said she would get us food from the cafeteria, but came back hours later, empty-handed, claiming there was nothing left. That night, the only sound in our room was my stomach growling. It turned out that even back then, Clara had already started taking care of Daniel. I didn't say anything. I just walked past her, took what little leftover food I could find, and went back to my dorm. I was halfway through my meal when there was a knock on the door. It was Clara and Daniel. She looked at me, her expression unreadable, and cleared her throat. "Leo, I need to talk to you about something." I looked at her without speaking. She glanced at Daniel, who stood beside her, looking cautious. Her eyes softened with tenderness when she looked at him. When she spoke again, her voice was firm. "Leo, Daniel just got back, and you know he's all alone. His place hasn't been lived in for a while and needs a good cleaning. Since we haven't officially tied the knot yet, I was thinking, maybe we could let Daniel stay at our place for a few days." I glanced at Daniel. The man I saw now and the man from my past life were two completely different people. If I didn't know better, I'd swear he had been reborn too. But I didn't have the time or energy to play along with his act. I didn't want this woman anymore. Whatever Daniel did was irrelevant to me. "Sure," I said. "It's your place. You can decide." Clara was clearly not expecting me to agree so easily. The speech she had prepared seemed to get caught in her throat. "But I don't like people touching my things," I added. "I'll move my stuff out later." "No need for that," she replied quickly. "I'll just move your things into the other room for you." The realization that she not only wanted Daniel in our wedding house, but also in my bed, made me chuckle softly. I saw Daniel's lips curl into a faint smile as well. After dinner, I took a flashlight and went to the house to gather my belongings. When I arrived, Clara was in the bedroom, making a bed for Daniel using the brand new sheets I had personally picked out for our wedding night. She was surprised to see me. "Leo, what are you doing here? I already moved your things to the other room." "Oh," I said casually, and turned to pack the rest of my personal items. Clara followed me, her expression a mix of emotions I couldn't quite decipher. "Leo." Just then, Daniel popped his head out of the bedroom. "Clara, isn't that the sheet you and Leo were supposed to use for your wedding? Is it really okay for me to use it?" His voice trailed off, becoming softer and softer. I saw the tenderness in Clara's eyes as she looked at him. She turned back to me. "Leo, you see, all the sheets at the house are new." I couldn't miss the flash of satisfaction in Daniel's eyes, but he still didn't understand. From the moment I was reborn, I had no intention of holding on to someone like Clara. "You bought the sheet," I said nonchalantly. "It's your decision." "Thanks, Leo." "Clara, you're both so good to me," Daniel said, his voice beaming. It sounded strange, and even Clara seemed to feel it. She turned to look at me but didn't say anything, as if she were still trying to test my limits. Daniel, realizing his mistake, covered his mouth. "Sorry, Leo. I'm sorry. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's really nothing going on between me and Clara. Maybe I should just sleep in my dirty clothes." With that, he reached for a bundle of dirty laundry. Clara quickly stopped him. "It's okay," I reassured Daniel. "You can sleep well. It's really not a big deal." Clara couldn't read anything from my expression and just stood there, lost in thought. I was busy packing and paid her no attention. Daniel, trying to cover his tracks, only made things worse. His goal was to provoke me, to appear weak and pitiful in front of Clara and make her dislike me even more. But having lived a whole other life, why would I care? I leaned in close to Daniel and whispered in his ear, "You're overthinking it. Why would I care? Clara is doing what's best for you, that's understandable. I wouldn't even mind if she married you. The real question is, would she—" I looked at him, smiled, and gave him a little wink. The color drained from Daniel's face. He couldn't figure out why I was so different from the naive, easily fooled Leo he remembered from our previous life. But then a look of realization crossed his face, and when he looked at me again, he was smirking. I finished packing my things and was about to leave with my bag when Clara suddenly called out from behind me. She stepped forward, trying to take the bag from my shoulder. I stepped away from her. What a joke! Daniel has been reincarnated, and after spending his last life as the other man, he was now trying to right his wrongs. He already viewed Clara as his personal property, and I had no desire to get caught up in their mess. When Clara saw me avoid her touch, her eyes filled with hurt. "Leo, are you upset? I can explain." It was surprising. In our last life, she let my entire life go to waste without offering a single word of explanation, but now she was eager to talk. I already knew what she was going to say. It would just be a way to justify her emotional betrayal under the guise of caring for a friend. "An explanation is pointless," I said. "Besides, Daniel wouldn't agree to it." Sure enough, a moment later we heard a screech from inside the house. Clara didn't even bother to see me off. She just ran back inside. I smirked, adjusted the bag on my shoulder, and walked away into the night. In my past life, I was married to Clara for 21 years and died at the age of 45. It was a young age to die. Raising my daughter to the age of 20 was the result of my constant, unwavering effort. From the day Clara disappeared, I never had a single good night's sleep. But reborn into this life, I hadn't married Clara. I hadn't exhausted myself from overwork. My body was healthy. I could finally sleep peacefully. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, I slept soundly, without a single dream. The next day, I asked for a leave of absence from my boss and informed him that I had accepted the offer to transfer back to City C. My boss was puzzled. "Didn't you tell me you didn't want to be separated from Clara after you got married?" I shook my head. "I'm not going to marry her. Right now, my career is the most important thing." My boss smiled, looking satisfied. In my last life, he had given me the same advice, telling me that my abilities could take me far. But I had been infatuated, and I threw away a great opportunity for a woman who was toxic to my soul. I asked my boss to keep my departure a secret, and we agreed on the timing. Leaving his office, I went straight to the train station. In this era, buying a train ticket meant standing in a long, slow-moving line. As I biked past the house Clara and I were supposed to live in, I saw them through the fence. Clara and Daniel were in the yard, brushing their teeth side by side. I saw Clara casually take a towel from the clothesline and gently wipe Daniel's hands. He looked at her with an expression of deep affection. It seemed their relationship had progressed significantly overnight. When they saw me cycling past the gate, Clara's face went white, and she quickly stepped away from Daniel. I looked away, ignoring her guilty conscience and his look of triumph. Remembering the way from my past, I found the train station. I paid a small fee to store my bike and joined the throng of people in the ticket hall. People back then traveled with large bags and bundles, carrying everything from sewing needles to entire sets of bedding. Looking at the crowded station, I decided to travel light. I would sell what I could and give away the rest. After standing in line for a long time, I chose a sleeper ticket instead of a standing room only one. I had suffered enough in my last life. This time I wanted to treat myself better. By the time I left the station, it was already afternoon. I had been so focused on getting the ticket that I had forgotten to eat lunch, and my stomach was rumbling. Following an old memory, I found the state-run restaurant where Clara and I first met on a blind date arranged by a mutual colleague. She was pretty and fair-skinned, exactly the neat and clean type I liked. We were both in technical fields, and our families both lived in City C, which I thought would make visiting family easy. She seemed satisfied with me as well, and we decided to start dating. She was never overly affectionate, but she was kind. She took care of me and sometimes helped with work-related problems. There wasn't a powerful romantic spark between us, but there was a strong sense of suitability. I thought we would have a quiet, peaceful life together. But then she hit me with an unexpected bombshell. 2 months after we started dating, she proposed. At the time, she seemed genuinely happy about the idea of marrying me. But a first love, it turned out, couldn't compete with a new infatuation. Daniel's appearance had given her a thrill our quiet relationship lacked, and her feelings had drifted. Love can be irrational and powerful, but she should never have selfishly abandoned everything and everyone for it, wasting my life in the process. After parking my bike, I walked into the restaurant. It wasn't crowded, so I immediately spotted Clara and Daniel sitting in a corner booth. Daniel saw me first and stood up, waving enthusiastically. "Leo, you're here to eat. Perfect, join us. Clara and I were just about to order. Don't be shy, it's just one more plate." He certainly lived up to his reputation as a top-tier charmer, the kind of man who could steal another's wife for over 20 years. 2 sentences in, and he was already acting like he was in charge. "Oh, no need to bother," I said with a smile, glancing at Clara. "I wouldn't want to interrupt your date." Clara paled and nervously stood up to pull a chair out for me. "Leo, don't misunderstand. Daniel and I... It's not what you think. I just thought he was too skinny and wanted to help him get a good meal." He managed to boast again, even through her excuse. I ignored her and sat down next to Daniel. Clara awkwardly touched her nose and sat back down. When I saw the table filled with delicious dishes, I was shocked. This meal must have cost her at least half a month's salary. She was certainly generous with Daniel. "Leo, try this braised pork," Daniel said, placing a piece in my bowl. "Clara said it's the best in town and insisted we order it. She even said she'd pack some for me to take home. Here, have a bite. And the fish. You have to try the fish. I've never had fish this good. Clara said she knows how to cook, and once we're back, she'll make it for me often." "Wait, Clara can cook? Last time when I was sick, she was a complete disaster in the kitchen, breaking plates and burning everything. I ended up having to cook for myself. It turns out that even love can be faked." I savored the braised pork. It was genuinely delicious. The food from this era tasted so much more real. The pork was rich with flavor, and the river fish was incredibly fresh, without the oily taste that would become common in later years. As I enjoyed the food, I barely paid attention to what Daniel was saying. Suddenly, he screamed, startling me so much I almost dropped my chopsticks. "Sorry, Leo," he laughed. "I just got spooked by a fishbone. Now, where were we? Oh, right. Leo, have you ever tasted Clara's cooking? If not, you should come by tonight. She promised she'd cook for me. Isn't that right, Clara?" Got scared by a fishbone? No, he had clearly noticed I wasn't paying attention and used it as an excuse to draw me back into his little performance. Show off all you want, I thought. Once I'm gone, let's see who you'll have to brag to. "You're very lucky," I said, looking at him. "I've known Clara for months and I never knew she could cook. You two have just met, and she's already cooking for you. I'd be thrilled to get a meal from her tonight." My words were supposed to make me sound jealous, but I honestly didn't care. Daniel looked shocked. Throughout this exchange, Clara's expression shifted from green to white. I just kept eating, completely unfazed by their reactions. When a dish of cold tofu arrived, I pushed it towards them, inviting them to share. The rest of the meal was much quieter. Finally, I could enjoy my food in peace. After leaving the restaurant, I said goodbye to them and cycled away. I needed to go to the post office to call my parents. In my previous life, after Clara disappeared, I was left to raise our child alone, while also taking care of her parents and holding down a demanding job. It was chaos every single day. For some reason, even though my family background was just as good as theirs, Clara's parents always looked down on me. They refused to help with the child and found endless ways to make my life more difficult. If I showed the slightest bit of dissatisfaction, they would come to my workplace and cause a scene. Holding on to a stable job wasn't easy back then, especially with a child to support, so I swallowed my pride time and time again. When my own parents found out, they helped as much as they could. They even tried to find someone else for me to marry. But when Clara's parents heard about it, they went to my parents' home and caused a huge commotion, accusing our family of trying to harm them. After that, whenever a woman showed any interest in me, Clara's mother would bring my daughter along and let her wail and cry in front of us. Eventually, no one wanted to marry me, and I gave up on the idea of remarrying, focusing all my energy on raising my daughter. Throughout all this, they caused my own parents endless grief. Even as they passed away, their biggest worry was for me. When the phone call finally connected, hearing my parents' voices after what felt like a lifetime made me break down and cry. Hearing me sob, they grew frantic with worry, thinking Clara had bullied me and wanting to confront her immediately. I calmed them down and told them everything that had happened and what I planned to do. They were silent for a long time on the other end of the line. Finally, my father said that if this was my well-thought-out decision, they would respect it. It was a massive relief. I told them I was transferring back to North Sea City and that my train ticket was for 3 days from now. My parents promised to cook all my favorite dishes and wait for me at home. When I got back to my dorm, I found Clara at my desk, looking through my study materials. I had almost forgotten she still had a key. I felt a wave of relief when I saw that the drawer containing my transfer report was still locked. Given our uncertain status, I didn't want any surprises before I could leave. Clara noticed me and quickly stood up to pour me a glass of water. She seemed to have something to say, but hesitated. I sat on the bed and slowly sipped my tea, waiting. Finally, she couldn't hold it in any longer. "Leo," she said, turning to face me, "it's not what you think between Daniel and me." I swallowed my tea. "What is it that I think?" I replied plainly. My question stumped her. If I were still the Leo from before, I would have trusted her, whether she explained herself or not. But now, after living an entire lifetime of misery because of her, her explanations were meaningless. Just before I died, she had confessed to me that she fell in love with Daniel at first sight. It was true love, she said, unlike what we had. In their story, I was the third wheel, the nuisance. "Leo, whether you believe me or not," she said, her eyes darting away, unable to meet mine, "I just wanted to take care of Daniel a little bit. He's all alone, you know, after losing his parents." If she couldn't even look me in the eye, why should I believe her? Still, I said it anyway. "Okay, I believe you. Now, could you please leave? I've had a long day and I need to rest." I paused. "Oh, and could you leave my dorm key here?" Her face turned to stone. She could clearly see that I didn't trust her at all. After she left, I wiped down the chair she had sat on. It felt dirty, genuinely dirty. I started packing. After working here for 6 months, I didn't have much. Just some clothes, bedding, and personal items. The main thing that needed to be settled was the wedding purchases we had made together. I would have to find time to sort that out before I left. A knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. It was Clara again, this time holding a small box of pastries. She offered it to me cheerfully. "Here, Leo, open it." I opened the box. Inside, instead of pastries, was a stack of money and ration tickets. "I've already thought it through," she said, smiling. "Once we're married, all my money will go to you. You just have to give me a monthly allowance." Looking at her, I felt like I was looking at a complete stranger. In our past life, after we got our marriage certificate, I never saw a single cent from her. When I got sick and couldn't afford the treatment, her parents didn't give me a penny. In fact, they said, "Let him die. It's a waste of money to try and keep him alive." It was my parents and my siblings who scraped together the money to pay the doctors and save my life. And later, when her own parents got sick, I was the one who paid for their medicine and their funerals. Even during the 20 years she was missing, she had secretly kept in touch with our daughter. I suspect she kept in touch with her parents, too. I don't know if she ever gave them any money. All I know is that just before Clara's mother passed away, she called my daughter into her room. When she came out, she was trying hard to look sad, but I could see a glimmer of happiness in her eyes. After the funeral, I searched her grandmother's room but didn't find anything of value. Later, when I got sick again and couldn't afford the treatment, I just let the illness drag on until it was too late. Thinking back on it now, maybe Clara knew I needed money from my treatment. And maybe my daughter hid the money her grandmother gave her, unwilling to use it to help me. The thought sent a sharp pain through my chest. Clara saw me suddenly start trembling. She rushed forward to support me, but I pushed her away. I leaned against the wall, taking a few moments to compose myself. When I looked at her again, my expression was just cold. She seemed to feel a chill run through her. I looked at the money in the box. Since she had brought it to me, I wasn't going to be the one to lose out. We couldn't settle the debts of our past life, but we could settle the debts of this one. I took out half the money, the amount I had contributed to our pre-wedding expenses, and handed the rest of the box back to her. She didn't seem to understand my actions, but she didn't ask any questions. Anyone could feel the change in me. She didn't know what had happened in those few minutes, but it seemed like something was slipping out of her control. After making sure I was okay, she left, looking back over her shoulder every few steps. That night I didn't sleep well. In my dreams, I saw Clara's parents telling her on the phone that I was in critical condition, and she just replied with a dismissive, "Oh, him." I also saw them secretly taking our daughter, who was just a baby, to see Clara. Clara knew I was looking for her, but she hid from me with everyone's help. No wonder no one who knew her would ever talk to me about her. I even dreamed of the colleagues I had worked with for years. I heard them praising Clara and Daniel's great love story. As for me, I was just the husband, the unfortunate result of Cupid having had too much to drink. What a joke. I woke up to a pillow soaked with tears, but I was still alive. I was still healthy. Life still held opportunities, didn't it? Over the next 2 days, I was busy arranging the details of my transfer. I had agreed to go to the dinner that Daniel had invited me to, the one Clara was supposed to cook. Since the incident with the money box had passed without another word, I thought the matter was settled. But then Daniel came by that evening to personally invite me over for dinner. I couldn't really refuse, so I agreed. When it was time, I headed over with a small gift. Peeking through the fence, I saw Daniel and Clara hugging. Clara's hand was resting on a part of Daniel's body where it definitely shouldn't have been. When they saw me, Clara's face turned paler than I had ever seen it. Daniel looked terrified and quickly fumbled to button his nearly open shirt, saying nothing. I turned around and walked away. So much for the big dinner. I wouldn't be needing the gift. It wasn't long before Clara caught up to me, grabbing my arm, desperate to explain. "Leo, listen to me. Daniel and I are not what you think." "Oh, really?" I said, my voice calm. "Is it the two of you, half-dressed and hugging each other? Or is it your hand being where it's not supposed to be?" Over the past 2 days, despite being busy, I had heard plenty from Mr. Chen. He couldn't stand homewreckers, especially Daniel's kind, who not only knew they were the third party but flaunted it. He had been giving me real-time updates on Clara and Daniel's disgusting antics. He told me people had seen Daniel intentionally rubbing up against Clara, and she didn't move away. Others saw them sharing food from the same bowl and holding hands in secluded places. At that moment, facing me, Clara looked like a complete mess. I couldn't understand why she would do all these things with Daniel, and then still come to me trying to clear up misunderstandings. Was she hoping I would stay and look after her parents while she and Daniel enjoyed their romance elsewhere? Before Daniel showed up, I was the only one close to you, I said, my voice steady. Daniel was here for less than an hour before you took him to the hospital. Within 3 hours, you let him wrap his arms around your waist on the back of your bicycle. Within 5 hours, you abandoned me to have a meal with him at the cafeteria. Within 7 hours, you let him stay in our marital home, sleep in our marital bed, using the bedding I prepared for our marriage. Within a day, you were willing to spend half a month's salary to treat him to a feast. Also within a day, you were willing to personally cook for him. You didn't evade his touch, you shared a meal from the same bowl, you held his hand, and just now you were hugging him, touching him. And yet you stand here before me telling me that there's nothing wrong. Do you really think I'll believe you? My words seemed to hit her hard. She started trembling uncontrollably, her lips moving, but no words came out. Let me guess, I continued, looking directly into her eyes. Let me guess why you're so desperate for me not to misunderstand, so desperate for me to believe you, even trying to buy me off. On the day we were supposed to get our marriage certificate, you fell in love with Daniel at first sight. He had feelings for you too, which is why he faked his injury to stop us from getting married. At that point, you weren't really interested in marrying me anymore, but you also hadn't figured out a future with Daniel. But recently, you realized you truly love Daniel and want to build a life with him. At the same time, you need someone to take care of your parents, someone who can see them through their old age and to the very end. Am I right? Clara looked up at me, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief. Seeing her stunned expression, a wave of pain washed over me. It was the pain of realizing I had wasted my life on someone so scheming. The pain of understanding that all our so-called sweet moments were nothing but a joke. I couldn't lie to myself any longer, and I wouldn't allow her to keep lying to me either. That evening, I was back in my dorm, packing my last few things, when Daniel showed up. He looked at me with a nasty expression on his face. "Leo, you're back too, huh?" he snarked. When he saw how calm I was, his eyes filled with disdain and mockery. It was as if he was saying, "In our past lives, even though you took my place as Clara's husband, you still ended up as a servant to her parents. And the son you worked so hard to raise? When you weren't looking, he called me Dad. Isn't that hilarious?" "Your wife is mine," Daniel went on. "Your son is mine. And in this life, even with your rebirth, you can't change the fact that Clara loves me. I'll be her husband this time. Only me." Even though I was deeply disappointed in the daughter from my past life, hearing that she had called another man Dad still stung. But thankfully this time, whether she liked it or not, I wouldn't be bringing her into this world. Daniel, like a cocky rooster, kept puffing out his chest and bragging, but when he looked into my eyes and saw only pity, sympathy, and compassion, everything except anger, he finally deflated and left. To me, he was just another poor soul, just like I had been. This time, without me to cover for them, could they really live a happy life like they did before? Around midnight, unable to sleep, I stepped outside for some fresh air and was startled by a figure sitting slumped against my door. Under the dim porch light, I saw it was Clara. She reeked of alcohol. Who knows how long she had been sitting there? Even with the experience of a past life, I still couldn't understand her. I grabbed a flashlight and went to find Daniel. When he heard that I was there to ask him to take Clara home, he paused for a moment, but then followed me back to the dorm without a word. Clara was fast asleep. Daniel struggled to get her up and carry her away. I didn't help. The woman he loved was his problem to sort out. The next day, as I was ready to leave with my luggage, Mr. Chen came by, telling me I had to come see the drama unfolding. We made our way to what was supposed to have been my and Clara's marital home. A small crowd had gathered. Clara was furious, glaring at a disheveled Daniel who was sitting on the floor. It turned out that after Daniel had brought her back the previous night, he had been consumed by jealousy. He remembered how she had run after me, how she had come back heartbroken, fallen asleep drunk at my door, and had even called out my name in her dreams. He couldn't stand it. So, while she was drunk and mistaking him for me, he had slept with her. Hearing the story from the villagers, I felt a wave of disgust. I turned to leave with my bags, but Clara grabbed me. "Leo, let me explain. Was this filthy woman for real?" Taking a deep breath, I looked at her, my face completely unfazed. "Clara, I thought I made myself clear yesterday." She searched my eyes, looking for any sign that I still cared about her at all, but she was disappointed. I felt nothing for her. Just the indifference you feel for a complete stranger. Indifference brings no anger, and no anger means that nothing matters. She finally realized that I truly didn't care about her anymore. She let go of my hand weakly and whispered, "I'm sorry." Sorry for what? For this life, or for the last one? I left Wanshuan village and went back to City C. Seeing my parents, healthy and happy, I finally broke down. Despite appearing carefree, the burden of my rebirth had been weighing heavily on me. The pressure of my entire previous life was suffocating, and there was no way to simply shrug it off. Clara and Frank could face a million cuts for all I cared, but I had my parents, my brother, and his wife. I couldn't let two worthless people ruin my second chance. Seeing my parents, untouched by the hardships of my previous life, healthy and well, I finally felt a sense of peace. I spent a few blissful days with my family and then threw myself back into my work. Without the burden of a child or Clara's parents, my work improved dramatically. I received a promotion and a pay raise. I was even hired as a guest professor by a local university, finally achieving an old dream of mine. About a year later, I heard news about Clara again. Daniel had fulfilled his past life's wish and married her. Soon after, she took him back to her parents' home in City C. But Clara's parents were anything but easy to deal with. In the past, despite my good job and standing, they had still looked down on me. They certainly weren't going to accept an unemployed man like Daniel. They made his life miserable. While her family descended into chaos, Clara tried to leave with Daniel, but her parents, furious at him for ruining everything, refused to let them go. They made sure Daniel stayed to serve them. Over time, the romance faded, and Clara began to see Daniel as just an ordinary, flawed man. She eventually applied for a transfer and left him behind. The last I heard, Daniel had started to fight back, and he and Clara's parents were locked in a cycle of tormenting each other, making everyone miserable. What surprised me the most was Clara. In our past life, she had resented me for Daniel's regrets and mourned bitterly at his photograph. But this time, she didn't show that same lengthy, deep affection for him. I had overestimated her. At her core, she was incapable of true repentance. The only person she had ever truly loved was herself. It wasn't genuine regret she felt, just bitterness over her own losses and failures. Thankfully, this time, I had escaped that cage. My life's future was filled with sunlight.